chocolate, and he sends them out to be analyzed by a local chemist by the name of Dr. Wood. Now, Dr. Wood, his report came back and said that the chocolates tested positive for arsenic. Arsenic is a chemical element that is on the scientific table posted. By high society ladies who just wanted to, look very pale as if they did not work out in the fields, because that was the look back then. You don't want to tan, you want to be white as fuck. But one of the more famous uses of arsenic was as a poison. And arsenic is not a poison you want to mess around with. You will suffer greatly. So with Mary Elizabeth dead, Dad knew that
BBs, welcome back to Decoradora. Today we are celebrating spooky season, which is my favorite season. Now, I wanted to do something a little bit different on this channel. I know I've done like DIY things before, but I wanted to do something specific to spooky season, and this one has kind of a special place in my heart. Ever since I was little, I've loved the Child's Play series. Now, I didn't actually see them until very recently, but I loved the idea of a doll coming to life, and when I was very little, I just assumed he went on adventures. But we all know that that's not true. But ever since I was little, I wanted a Good Guys doll of my very own. And because, no offense to Trick or Treat Studios, I didn't feel like shelling out $600 to get one, so I figured, why not try and make one myself? So I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that the Chucky doll, the Good Guys doll, was actually inspired by a couple different toys from the mid to late 80s. The first one being the My Buddy doll, which if you were a little kid in the early 90s, you knew exactly what that was. But the second, and for some reason less talked about inspiration for Chucky's design, was the Corky doll made by Playmates. And I can see how this doll could inspire some horror movies because he was pretty interesting. Check out this original Corky commercial and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Hi, pal. My name's Corky. Come on and be my best friend. Okay. I'll tell you stories and we'll play together. We can pretend. Wanna be monsters?
Not really.
How about circus ringmasters? Or race car drivers? Gee, Corky, when you talk about something, it's almost real. I know some great songs, too. We will be best friends.
Corky, he's Cricket's little brother by Playmates.
So yeah, pretty clear similarities between Corky and Chucky, all the way down to like the personalized shoelaces and the catchphrases. Now here is a really fun fact for those of you who don't know. The voice actor who actually played Corky's voice in his little cassette tapes actually went on to voice Chucky for the original Child's Play movies. Well, the Chucky doll. Everybody knows that the evil Chucky is played by Brad Dourif, a brilliant actor. But the actual doll voice is played by the same kid who did Corky's voice. So really, it's kind of a crazy parallel between the two different toys. So, I figured I'd start there. So I went online and I found myself an authentic vintage Corky doll with the intent to transform him into my very own Good Guy doll. So, stick around and you will be able to see exactly how I did that. Alrighty, first things first, we have to start with a little bit of makeup removal. So I get to start with the lovely and not at all disturbing task of putting green painter's tape over this poor doll's eyeballs. And then I just take some pure acetone and some definitely not brand name cotton swabs, and I just take a second and remove the eyelashes and I guess eyeliner in this case, but it's not eyeliner in the context. You know what I mean. So I start off with that, and it made a little bit of a mess, so I just take a little bit of paper towel that's been dipped in the acetone and clean up those areas. Then, using a craft blade, I give this Corky doll some eye surgery. I noticed that the Good Guy doll from the movies has very wide open eyes, and so I wanted to achieve that effect by just widening the sockets here a little bit. He has hooded eyes, so I just wanted to clean up this area and just make his eyes a little wider and more expressive. Next step is we're going to repaint the eyes. Obviously Chucky has bright blue eyes and this doll doesn't, so we're going to repaint them. I wanted to remove the color and paint in the blue instead of painting on top of it because that can just kind of get muddy and I didn't want that. I did notice, however, that once I finished removing the brown paint from his eyes, he ended up looking like some sort of zombie. So we're going to start with a base coat of very, very light sky blue. I use this just by a mixture of light blue and white. Next, I'm going to paint the details of the iris. Originally, I wanted to replicate how these looked in the original movie with these sort of starburst patterns, but that was really, really hard for me to replicate with the small detail brushes that I had, so I decided to go for a more lifelike appearance. The way I justify this is like, this was kind of like the first sign of him turning from a doll into that doll-human hybrid. Next, I'm going to paint on the eyelashes using a fine detail brush and black acrylic paint. Now, you'll notice that we kind of jump ahead a little bit because I didn't actually like the way these first lashes turned out, so I actually end up redoing them after everything else is done. As you can see here, the hair is different, and we'll go over how I did the hair, but I also wanted to record the process of me fixing the lashes and making them look the way I want them to. Next, I'm going to start the process of blushing the cheeks and the nose. Now, I don't have the kind of tools that doll repainters usually have, like pan pastels or Mr. Super Clear, so what I did was I actually used red permanent marker and dabbed it on with my fingers. Unfortunately, this actually ended up becoming discolored eventually, but thankfully over time it has actually returned to a sort of rosy red color. Next up is the process of straightening the hair. Now this was really interesting because I had to do a lot of research on how to do this properly because I wanted to make sure that the original hair was intact. The last thing I wanted to do was take all the hair out and put a wig on it. So what I ended up doing was researching how to straighten doll's hair. And I found out that the Corky doll has what's known as Kanekalon hair. I think that's how you pronounce that. And so what you have to first do is brush out all the curls, like so. And I'm using just a small hairbrush for that. Next, you have to dampen the hair using a solution of warm water and fabric softener. And so what I did was I just put that into a little travel spray bottle so that I could really just spritz it all over the hair without it getting too oversaturated. I wanted it to be covered, but not soggy, if that makes sense. Next, I take a small straightener and just piece by piece, section by section, I just slowly, but not too slowly because you don't want to melt the hair, I just, on its lowest setting, I just begin to pull it through the sections of hair and straighten it out. Now this took a pretty long time because you need to have it on its very lowest setting and there's a lot of hair here. So I ended up sort of brushing it in the direction I wanted. I found out where I wanted the part to be and guided the hair where I wanted it and then continued to go along with the straightener just to make sure it was nice and even and all the curls were out. The next step is we're going to create the iconic Good Guys top. Now, I debated on how I wanted to accomplish this, but then I ended up going on Amazon and found a really great quality just shirt with that kind of pattern on it. And it was really affordable, so I felt more comfortable like playing around with it because I've never really made clothes before. Anytime I ever make costumes, I really just take existing pieces and embellish them or alter them. Doing this kind of labor-intensive sewing project was challenging, but in a really, really fun way. So I started by cutting a slit up the back because I wanted to create an open back so you could access the electronics. And also, it made a really, really easy solution to just taking the whole thing in and giving me some extra material to work with. Next, I'm taking some loops of fabric that I created from some of the scraps, and I'm creating little button loops because I wanted to kind of retain that vintage sort of feel. I didn't want to use Velcro to close up the back, so I thought buttons would be kind of a cuter and more, I don't know, authentic solution. That was my justification. Okay, so sorry for the abrupt light change, but I needed to fix my workstation so that it was like easier for me to see what I was doing. But what I'm doing here is I actually took some cuffs from an old sweater that I had, and I trimmed them and sewed them to the ends of the sleeves because I had to shorten the sleeves. Next, we are recreating the iconic Good Guys overalls. Now, I started this process by carefully removing the buttons and the front pocket. I put the front pocket to the side so that I could alter it later and reattach it. Then the next part, I placed the icons and emblems onto the overalls. So how I did that was I used a service called stickeru.com, not sponsored. I went into Photoshop and I created a document that laid out all the different icons and had them custom printed on opaque iron-on transfer paper. And then I carefully cut out each individual icon with a craft blade and hand placed them on the overalls before ironing them on. And what's interesting is I actually found these online after searching for hours. It felt impossible to find any kind of blue corduroy overalls, but I found them in the baby section of a department store website on clearance. I was elated because I absolutely adore how they turned out. So then I just ended up repeating the process on the back of the overalls. I then repeated the same process on the overall straps. Now it's time to work on the front pocket. I start by pinning it in the shape that I need it and ironing that in place so that the shape holds. Then I cut and place the Good Guys logo and iron it on. Now it's time for what turned out to be probably the most laborious part of the entire project, and that is recreating the white stitching on the overalls. They originally came with stitching that matched the fabric in this sort of muted blue color, so I took a needle and thread and hand stitched all of the decorative stitching, starting with the top of the pocket, the straps, and top hems of the overalls with white thread. Now, after turning the overalls inside out and doing a test fit on the doll itself, I take it and turn the cuffs back around so that I could use some extra fabric from the sweater material and actually create those rolled cuffs on the bottom of the pant legs of the overalls. Next, we are creating the sneakers of Chucky. The original Corky shoes were almost, in a lot of ways, identical to Chucky's shoes. I start off by removing the factory paint from the toes of the shoes using acetone. I tried to use fingernail polish remover, but it just wasn't strong enough. I tried alcohol, wasn't strong enough, so I just had to be really careful and use pure acetone and some cotton swabs. You have to be careful with acetone because if you use too much for too long, you can actually melt the plastic or the vinyl, so I had to be extra careful, but I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. Then, using white acrylic paint, I go in and paint all of the details. I paint around the sides of the sole of the shoe, I paint the top rim of the shoe and around the lace holes, and then I go in and I paint 2 stripes on either side of the shoe, as well as outlining the back of the heel. Now, this process took a little bit of time because for it to look even and opaque, I ended up having to use, I think it was 5 coats, maybe 3 coats, at least 3 coats of paint. Alrighty, all of the different pieces are assembled, and now it's just time to put it all together. Start off with the sweater, put on the overalls, the shoes, and the laces. Now, the laces were really fun. I was racking my brain trying to figure out how to make these happen, but then I found out that they were doing a sort of horror movie nerd subscription box where one of the prizes you could get were actual like shoelaces that had the Good Guys logo on them, and they were only a few bucks by themselves on eBay. So I just picked up a pair of those and threaded those through the shoes, and they look perfect. Now on to the final reveal. welcome to the end of the video. This is obviously how he turned out. I am absolutely thrilled with this, and I'm so excited to add it to my sort of childhood nostalgic memorabilia collection. Thank you so much for joining me for this project. I hope you enjoyed the funny little intro I did for this. I felt like, you know, being a little cinematic for this one. Tell me what you think in the comments. I hope you're having an incredible spooky season. I know that I am. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to comment. Please subscribe. If you haven't already, go and check out my main channel, Dora Diamond. I will link that in the description below. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're staying well and safe and happy, and I hope you have an incredible spooky season and an even better Halloween. Alrighty, darlings, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!